I want to thank everybody for joining us here at Miller Inc.'s headquarters and online, and we're live streaming this. I'm grateful to these guys for everything they've done the last year through what's been a crazy year for so many of us. I think they've just been total tireless champions of the people of the Palisades and all the issues we're facing. And so as I've watched and listened and had the opportunity to be on the podcast, Joel and I were talking, and we thought it'd be really fun to do a live event with some live participation. And so really grateful to them for being here. And I think they're going to take it away, and then we'll have some live audience participation. I just ask everybody to put your phones on silent, and we'll get started. Thank you.
Everyone. Thank you very much to Nate and to Miller Inc. and to Helene for putting this on. This is really an incredible opportunity to speak to our audience and also to support Nate's business and to reconnect with neighbors. You know, Nate, you would often invite me to your house and we'd sit in your backyard, perhaps ironically around the fire pit. And anytime there was an interesting author in town or a filmmaker or someone you thought that people should speak to and get to know, you would invite us over. And those fire pit discussions, I think, have relocated here to this amazing space with all the artwork, which keeps rotating. It always changes every time I'm in here. And you are really just a cultural and intellectual mainstay of our community. So thank you to Miller Inc. And we're always happy to promote everything you're doing, and this is just a tremendous opportunity. We're going to begin just by talking a little bit between the three of us about how we started this, where we are in our rebuilding or repairing process, and what we see as the future, whether politically or personally, or future of the podcast, and then open it up to the audience for questions and discussion. And we're really just so grateful that you took time out this evening to be with us. So I want to just kick off by asking these two gentlemen, Oren Ezra to my left and Ron Goldschmidt to my right, and I'm Joel Pollack, of course. I wanted to ask them to explain the origins of the podcast because I was actually the last person to join. So I don't know which one of you guys wants to start, but go ahead.
I'll take this. The podcast started because I and Oren were getting tons of messages from people that we know, hey, in the days after the fire, about different tactical things of what to do with insurance, what to do with building, what to do with rebuilding, what to do with fireproofing. And it was just like a menagerie of different questions that I got from, it seems like dozens of people. I guess I'm that guy where people like ask a lot of questions, and I think Oren is as well. And as we were answering these questions piecemeal, our common friend, Oz Porat, said, hey, why don't you guys start a podcast and talk about all these issues in a more condensed, long-form way so people can have help? And then we thought, that's a great idea. And then I called the only person in media that I know, which is Joel. And I was like, Joel, is this of any interest to you to do? And he was like, actually, it's a good idea. Let's do it. So, and that's how it started, kind of organically.
Yeah. So the day after the day of the fire, actually, it's I don't think I ever told this story, but like at 4 p.m. we left the house around probably 12 or 1 p.m. I got to the house of my best friend growing up with, like he has a guest house, and I'm sitting in my van and I'm watching the Ring cameras, seeing the fire because the fire started like right across my house. So I'm sitting over there and I'm looking at the fire coming down, and I see the fire starting to come around my house, and I see a gas leak starting to come at 4:15, I think. Everything dropped. I told my friend, Kiko, bring your best bottle of scotch. Today we're celebrating. He's like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm like, listen, this is so crazy that something good have to come out of this. Something good have to come out of this thing, because I don't know, in my life, every time that something horrible happened to me, I was able to make something good out of it. So everybody, we were a bunch of really good friends in Sunset Mesa, me, Ron, a bunch of other families, and everybody is like, oh, I think that our house is burned down, sending video, and I'm sending photos of me drinking the bottle of scotch. We end up finishing the bottle of scotch. I celebrated. I like went full on. And the morning after, I woke up with this mentality. And Ron is exactly the same thing like me. We woke up with a mentality of like, okay, what can we do? What's next? What's the first thing we need to take care of? The first thing is insurance. Now, after that, what do we need to think of? Like rebuild. And we started getting phone calls from all our neighbors, because a lot of you guys know, a lot of the people that live in the Palisade, are like late 60s, retired. A lot of people bought their houses in the 1970s or whatever it is. And we started to get a lot of phone calls. Hey, what are you guys doing? What's with insurance? And then, we were dealing with this all day long. And me, Ron, and Oz, that was with us from that day. He used to live in Sunset Mesa. He lived in a different area of Malibu, but he stopped everything that he's doing, and he's spending all his days with us. And suddenly you see that like all we do is trying to help our neighbors and learning in order to help our neighbors. And I think that one of the biggest lessons for me from this like last year is that when you help people around you, it's like there is some sort of like, I don't know if to call it energy, whatever it is, something is flowing through you. It's helping you go through the process. And I think the thing that helped us the most is not being, not concentrate on our pain, but trying to help others. I think that's the thing that helped us the most, and I think that's the power of community. I think that like everybody we met, even people that didn't lose their house, or people that lived in different areas of the city, or like everybody came together. And I think that this is the strongest thing. This is the power of community. Is something so strong that I learned throughout this last year, that we're able to help the community, and the community is helping us. And if there is one thing I would love to see in like 10 years from today, is that the Palisade community is a community that is helping each other like rebuild, helping each other grow. We have like amazing builders in the community, people like Jean that is over here, that is like build a business around helping the community rebuild in like normal prices. I think that that's again power of community.
Well, I just want to build off that and talk a little bit about my experience of the podcast, and then we'll talk about where we are in our rebuilding or repairing process. We moved to Pacific Palisades in 2019, as it turned out, right before the pandemic. But we had been in Palisades almost every day because my kids had attended the daycare at the Chabad of Palisades on Los Leones and Sunset for 12 or 13 years, or however many years it was. And so Pacific Palisades was really just part of our lives. And then we moved to our home and the pandemic hit. So we had this year of isolation. We didn't actually meet our neighbors, very many of them. We loved the neighborhood. We walked around everywhere. That's how we kept in shape. We would walk to the top of Lockman, walk back down. And then we had another challenge, which was that my mother-in-law was diagnosed with lung cancer, and she lived in a building just 2 blocks away from us, and that was an incredibly difficult time as well. And then shortly after that, there was the crisis in the Middle East with October 7th, and we have a lot of family in Israel and close connections there, so that was also very difficult. And I suppose in a way, in our family, we had confronted these things somewhat on our own, yes, with community members at times, and we had incredible support from neighbors around the time of my mother-in-law's lung cancer, and there's a Jewish community that supported us as well. But when the fire happened, it was the first time I felt connected to everybody. And this very strange thing happened to me, and I'll just keep the details out of it and tell the overall arc of the story. But the morning after the fire started, so on the 8th of January, I started wondering what happened to my house, because on the fire map, it looked like my house was on the border of where the fire was. We later learned those maps weren't really accurate, but I sent a text message to my friend Alex Michelson, who at that time was working for Fox 11 and is now on CNN. He has his own show. And I have to just say this about him. He is the most fair person I've encountered in television journalism. Absolutely down the middle, respectful of everybody's opinion, whether you're on the left or the right, absolutely respectful. He's an incredible person, and his mother bakes brownies for every show, which is just wonderful. But I said to him, do you think I can get into the Palisades with my media pass? He says, yes, you can. So I told my wife, I'm going in, and I drove into the smoke, and it was pretty scary because you didn't know what you were driving into. And I stopped and wondered if I should go further. Then I got into a clearing, so I kept going, and then I saw the flames, and it was tough to decide where to go, but eventually I made it up to my house, and it was miraculously still there, although other homes on my street were on fire. And I managed to put out the fire that had started on my fence, because my house was surrounded by smoke, and I went to see what happened. The fence was burning very close to the house. These two men appeared out of nowhere. I still don't know who they are. And the three of us formed a human chain with buckets of water, and we put out the fire on the fence, and we put out the fire in the neighbor's yard, put out the fire on the trees, put out the neighbor's fence. Later, a couple days later, one of my colleagues, Jonathan Kahn, who lost his house, he's a singer-songwriter, he lost his house, he lost his recording studio, he came to my house, and he saw a fire still burning. I think it was 5 days into the fire in my neighbor's yard. At that point, we were able to get the fire department to come in and do something about it. But everybody was helping everybody else. And the other amazing thing was that when I got to my house, there was a garden hose that had been extended across my lawn, which told me that one of the neighbors had put out the fire when it started on my fence. So they had slowed it down. And I still don't know who did that. I don't know who these two men were. I said, let me take your contact details, but we had to leave quickly because the school auditorium at Marquez basically exploded. And they said, we have to get out of here. We can't stay here. And I said, well, how will I find you? They said, don't worry, we know where you live. But I've never found them. These two angels, basically, that came in. And I started going around the rest of the community into areas that had burned already. And this is on the 8th. And I found a couple of friends, Nate's neighbors, Dixon and David. And we drove around together, and we put out a fire on somebody's fence. I had Diet Coke in the back of my car, and that's what we used because there was no water. And we managed to help save that house, but their house was totally gone. And we just encountered these random people walking around in Palisades, but we realized there was just no information. Nobody had any information about their house. So I started sending people photographs if they asked me to check on their address. And I spent the next 2 or 3 weeks driving in every day and going to addresses. I would start the day with about 10 addresses and go and check. And it took a long time, actually. And nobody was allowed in. They didn't allow people in. So I was providing information to people. And it was the first time in my life that I had felt useful to my neighbors. I have conservative political views that nobody really wants to hear, so I didn't really vocalize them. The one time I did, I regretted it. There was a neighborhood joke during the 2020 election. My neighbor put a Biden sign in front of his house, so we put a Trump sign in front of our house. So then he put a bigger Biden sign, so then we put a bigger Trump sign. And the big Halloween prank was reversing the signs, putting my... So it was kind of funny, but it was also a time when I realized I just didn't want to have politics interfere with my relations with my neighbors. And I actually told people several times, the reason I don't talk about politics or put up signs anymore is that I don't know when I'm going to need my neighbor's help in an emergency, and I don't want anyone to think about, oh, I don't want to help that guy, or I can't, or whatever. And actually, nobody would think that way, but it was in my mind that we need to cooperate. So this podcast was an extension of what I had started doing, and when these gentlemen invited me to participate, it was a natural transition, and I just am so grateful. You know, the Monsignor of St. Monica's and the Rabbi of Chabad were both together with Rick Caruso at the Village Mall tonight, and they lit these 3 beams of light. And the point they all made was exactly what you said about giving, that when you give, you also receive. And I think we've all learned that we've gained so much by helping each other and by being helped. You know, it's so ennobling. And I've never experienced anything like it in my life. It's actually the most incredible feeling. So we bounced around LA for a while, and when my wife was offered a job, she's the chief economist at the Department of Labor, which is an incredible opportunity. I said, just take it. We don't know where we're going to end up. We don't know what's going to happen career-wise with all this chaos. So she went to DC, and I stayed in LA with the kids finishing the school year, and we eventually joined her. And then I took a new job here back in LA, so I'm going back and forth. And I really wanted to take this new job. I was at Breitbart News. Now I'm the opinion editor at the forthcoming California Post. And for me, it was a way of setting roots down here and reconnecting and retaining that sense of community and connection to everybody. So this podcast has been a part of that, and it's been the most amazing gift to feel like a neighbor and really just connect to people. And many neighbors are here tonight and friends that we've made in this process. So I would never have wished this to happen, but I've actually seen so many positive things happen as a result as well. So let's just talk about where we are in rebuilding. I'll let you guys start. Ron is the construction technology finance expert, so his house is already built, right?
Yeah, right. Totally. The house is not rebuilt. I'm not even in plans yet. And the reason is because as we had to move from Malibu Palisades to Brentwood, my kids needed to start school somewhere else. And they just started high school, so I'm kind of like not in a super rush because we know we're not going to be back for at least 3-4 years while they're in a new high school in the valley. And we can't logistically make it work for the next few years. So we're going to start rebuilding soon, but it's not a super rush. However, aside from the rebuilding, we're still fighting insurance. Like we're almost all the way there. We were covered by State Farm, as all of us were, and we've done a few episodes about State Farm. I still think like that the book is not all written about our fight with State Farm and what's that going to result in and cascade into. I believe this issue of insurance, just like many, many other issues that we've had to deal with, we're just in the first throes of things. And we're going to see a lot of repercussions down the line of what's happening right now on all these different fronts. We saw that again today, even from a political angle with the mayoral announcement by Spencer Pratt, and I'm glad that's in place. But I think just so many things, we're just still, even though it's been a year, we're not even in the first inning of what's going to happen, and the repercussions are going to happen after that. And from an insurance perspective, I believe that to be true as well. So personally, we're kind of still at the beginning of that journey, but I am really, really hopeful that coming out of this first year, we're now going to start see the fruits of what we've been working on, and the community organization and everything that's been pent up politically, legally, is going to start bearing fruits here in the next year.
So yeah, I didn't start yet, and actually we have a lawyer here, and we have a builder over here, and I'm thinking about State Farm. State Farm, only today I got a call that they're going to evaluate the quote that I sent them, and hopefully I will get to know how much money I'm getting. That's at least what I will get to know in 10 days. So that means that from January 7 until January 7, today is the day that I got a call, I spent a year now just waiting for State Farm to let me know how much money I'm getting. I paid my insurance. I moved to the house in 2019, just like you, Joel. I paid my insurance every month on time, and I was insured. I wasn't insured for a crazy amount. I was insured to rebuild my house. And for the last year, I've been trying to figure out, and it's me, and I know that a lot of other people that listening to us and over here now had the same fight. And think about it like owning a business, needing to wake up every morning, go to work, dealing with insurance, dealing with changing kids' school, doing all of these things. This year was crazy for everybody that's listening, for us, for you guys. And again, I think that the insurance issue is one of the biggest hold up until now to rebuild. From now on, it will be the city, the county, wherever you're at. We're in Sunset Mesa, so we're the county. Hopefully, the county should be a little bit easier. We don't know. We didn't start it yet. Ron is nothing. No, we just don't know yet. But we're hoping that it will be a little better. And we don't know how long it will take. And like if my insurance held me up for a year now, because I didn't know how much money I have, I don't know how much money I'm going to spend. Are they going to give me like more than what I'm supposed to get?
They're not going to give you more.
I know.
Let me just answer that.
It was like obviously they're not, but there is like throughout the year we talked about all the issues we had, and I think now we're talking a lot about the issues that we have. Everybody knows, like it's insurance, it's like permitting. I just heard from one of the neighbors that he bought a lot in Sunset Mesa, and now we need to build like put tons of money on like reframing the house, and like a lot of surprises like this. And I'm thinking to myself, how long it will take until we're actually back to a livable neighborhood. And livable neighborhood for me is that at least 70% of the houses are rebuilt, 60% of the houses are rebuilt. I don't want to live in a neighborhood where like Sunset Mesa was 300, almost 400 houses. If they're going to rebuild like now 300 houses that burned down, I want to live in a neighborhood that like constantly there is like 50 to 100 houses that are being rebuilt. How can you live in a neighborhood like this? And on top of it, when let's say I'm optimistic, okay? In 4 years, we all move back in, and what's going to be our property tax? What's going to be our people think that people in the Palisade, Malibu, super rich. It doesn't matter how much money you're going to pay. No, we all like wake up in the morning. We all go to work. We work very hard. Suddenly if they're taking out our like property taxes to like 50,000, 60,000, 100,000, even 20,000, 30,000, it's a lot of money to pay double or triple of what you used to pay. So I'm concerned about the future. I'm concerned about the future of the neighborhood. I don't know if it's going to become like a condensed living area. I'm concerned in general.
Well, the interesting thing with my situation is I still have a standing house, but I can't live in it. And in fact, right now I can't even go into it because it is contaminated with lead and bismuth and zinc, and it's being remediated. But while it's being remediated, I can't go in. And we also discovered contaminants in the soil. So once the testing comes back and the house is free of contamination, they have to remove 6 inches of soil, just like they did for the lots that were cleared. And yet, I finally won this long struggle with the insurance companies. Let me say something very short about that, but it relates to this podcast. I met someone at Ben Allen's invitation, actually. Ben Allen, who is our outgoing state senator, who was a college classmate of mine, and who has always been very fair-minded, like Alex. Doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, he's always been very kind to everybody. He invited me to come meet this organization called After the Fire. And I met Jennifer Gray Thompson, who runs After the Fire, and she had been through the Tubbs fire in Santa Rosa, up in Northern California. And our first interaction was pretty rough because I think I made some stupid political comment and she responded. Yeah, exactly. And she responded. It was clear we were on opposite sides of things, and we smiled about it, but I don't think it was the best interaction. But then I said, you know what, come on the podcast and talk about, After the Fire. I don't really care what anyone's politics anymore. I mean, that really did go right out the window when the fire happened. So she came on the podcast and she talked about her experiences and what After the Fire does in facilitating relationships and organizing people. And she introduced me to Joy Chen, who lives in Altadena. And Joy Chen, her house survived, so she threw herself into organizing her neighbors, and it turned out they were having all the same insurance problems, so she organized the Eaton Fire Survivors Network. she came onto our podcast. Through our podcast, she met people from Pacific Palisades. Palisades and Eaton now started working together through Joy Chen. And again, it came from Ben Allen to Jennifer Thompson, to us, to Joy Chen, back to us, to the Palisades. So now there's this large network of people who are upset with the insurance company, and they're putting pressure on State Farm and on the California Insurance Commissioner. And that's when things started to move in a positive direction in my own insurance battle. And I don't know if they were reacting to public pressure or whatever, but it does show you the amazing connections that can happen. And I don't think Jennifer would mind if I shared something. She and I still argue about politics, though in a much friendlier way right now. But Doug LaMalfa, who was a Republican congressman, died yesterday, and he had been to Pacific Palisades to visit the wildfire area and the burned area because he had to deal with fires in his own district. And he had a lot of insights as to how to rebuild and so forth. And Jennifer told me that she disagreed with Doug LaMalfa on 80% of the issues, but that on the fire issues, there was nobody better. And they were able to work together to get things done in Washington for communities that had been devastated by fire. And the other thing she told me was that he knew his constituents by name. And that's really a great public representative. And it just shows that even in this really bitterly divided time, politically, geographically, I mean, Pasadena's far if you're in Pacific Palisades. Altadena's far. But everybody has been finding ways to come together. And I do think that moved the insurance situation forward. So the long and the short of my own story is that we are waiting for testing results to come back. There are still little struggles with the insurance company. They told me this week that they accidentally sent me a rent check instead of the landlord of the place we're renting right now. So now I have to figure out if I owe my insurance company money, which is sort of an odd experience. But I do feel hopeful. But every day brings a new challenge. When the work on my house started, I went there to take a look at it. And I was so happy to see the crew showing up at 7 in the morning and they're working. And then I got to the front of my house and my heart sank because I live next door to the LADWP lot. And they had put up this monstrosity literally overnight. They had dumped a bunch of dirt and they put these trailers up to be the new recovery center. Now I'm very glad the community is going to have a one-stop shop to go and solve all their planning and permitting problems. I just wish they had told me they were going to do it before they did it. If you or I did that on our own property, just put stuff up and move dirt around, we'd get fines from the city. We might get prosecuted for endangering, I don't know, native plant species or something.
Try to put a shed in Malibu.
Yeah, try to build a shed. Well, they just put this thing up. Anyway, so I'm supposed to meet them and walk around the site and explain to them why what they did was really bad. But anyway, it's one challenge after another, but it does feel like generally the momentum is in a positive direction. Okay, last question before we open it up to everybody. Where do you think things are going from here, looking into the future? Politically, personally, podcast-wise?
I just think like we're really, really early days. I think some of the repercussions, like I said before, we're just going to begin to see them for the next while. And we're just I think like when the fire happened in our area, what most people don't understand is like just how resilient the community is, how powerful the community is. There's people here that are just like, you know, there's been lots of fires all over the US, but I think there's something special about the Palisades Malibu that is going to touch off here, and it's going to touch off something that is much bigger than all of us. And I think we're just beginning to see that now, and we're like we're driving to the game. We're not even in the first inning of this. And I really believe in my heart, and based on what we saw today even, and many other things that are going to come down the line, that this is going to start off, I don't want to be too gargantuan, call it a revolution, but I do believe like it's somewhat akin to a revolution on many different layers, politically, legally, insurance-wise, firefighting techniques. I think we've woken up the sleeping giant, which is our community, and it's just going to go off into a very, very different plane right now. And I think we're just players in that. And we should all keep on pushing in our own way for this to happen. And I really, really believe that is going to happen. Because if you go outside of our community, I don't feel like people have been woken up to what we're experiencing yet, but I think like it's slowly seeping through. And again, politically, like, what we saw today with like Spencer's announcement, which I'm very glad about. If you go outside and you ask folks that don't live in our communities, what do you think about Karen Bass? What do you think about the political landscape? I don't think that you're gonna get like a lot of answers like of how the rage that we're feeling. Like, I don't think you see that outside. And I don't have to, like, go and look at the numbers. Karen Bass is 2/3 favorite to win the election right now. That is crazy, but that's what I follow like Polymarkets and Kalshi and all those prediction sites. Go look it up. 65% odds to win. And her opponent is Rick Caruso, who hasn't even announced that he's running and probably might not even run. So this is like not seeping into the general knowledge right now, but I feel like we have like this energy that's bubbling up within our communities, and it's slowly gonna work itself up. And I really believe that is going to cause a massive change at the state level on many, many different fronts. And I feel like we should all be the worker ants that make that happen. And I truly believe that it's going to happen.
So I think that like the main thing that we need to focus on as a community in the next like few months is the who we're going to vote for our mayor, for our governor. And actually the way me and Joel met, I moved in 2016 to Santa Monica. And when I moved to Santa Monica, I started to go to Santa Monica Chabad, and I met this great couple, Joel and his wife, and I met a lot of people. And Joel was very vocal about Trump, and me and my wife looked at him like, whoa, like this guy is like has something loose in him. And we actually, I don't even think I ever told you, but I think we like kept a little distance because of that. And then I moved to Sunset Mesa in 2019, and another neighbor of mine, another Trump supporter, that like totally, had totally opposite way of thinking from me. And I think that what happened in the last years, probably since October 7 in Israel, probably changed me and my wife's minds. But the story, I think, is not about like Democrats or Republicans. It's about our community and about choosing the people that, I don't care if he's a Republican, if he's a Democrat. I care about people that like take responsibility, do the right thing for our community. We all like work very hard. We all pay our taxes. We all do everything we need to do in order to have a better life. Like I remember Santa Monica in 2016, go to the promenade. In 2008, I tried to open a store in the promenade. It was impossible, a waiting list of 6 years. Impossible. Now, like wherever you want, you'll open a store over there. What happened in Santa Monica? What happened in the big cities? We need somebody that will come in and really take care of the city, really take care of like somebody that is not incompetent, somebody that is like, if there is a wildfire coming, and we all knew that there is a wildfire coming, right? Winds are crazy. There was a fire ahead of it. Somebody that will at least stay in the city. We're not asking for too much, If you're the mayor of LA, at least stay in the city. So again, I think that in the next, you talked about the future of the podcast. I think that we will start we need to start talking about who and why this is the right person for us as people from the Palisades, as people from Malibu, as people from LA County. Who are the right people for us? The people that can really help us rebuild and help us make our neighborhoods safe. Again, the community will need to decide on it. And if we'll choose the wrong people, whatever happens after, it's on us.
So, personally, I'll start with that. I am in a very funny situation, which is that we're in a bi-coastal family now. I think that's the term. And we had set a target date for moving back in the fall of 2027, and that's still the target date. But we don't know exactly what's going to happen, and there are all kinds of things that are out of our control. One of the other things we've noticed is that we're not DC people. DC has been fun at times, but the kids, we have 4 children, to varying degrees really miss California. And my eldest daughter has adjusted fairly well to her new school, but wants to come back and visit her friends. My elder son, our second child, pines for California every night, and we try to limit his video game time, but he basically plays video games with all of his Pacific Palisades friends every night, despite the time difference. You know, he knows exactly when they're going to come on, and they play together. And the younger 2 kids, well, my 4-year-old, if you ask her, where do you live? She says Pacific Palisades. She hasn't lived in Pacific Palisades in a year, but that's what she says. And she'll adjust, I think, wherever we are. She's still young enough, but really the older 2 kids especially, and my son, my elder son, we have a little baby boy as well who was being pushed in a stroller when the fire started around the neighborhood. My elder son is really a Southern California kid, and this was brought home to us in the week before Christmas break when my wife and my son both had this sort of odd illness that was caused, we think, by the cold. I mean, there are certain allergic reactions you can get or that are worse in a cold climate, and sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't, but there are certain kinds of allergies that are triggered by cold, and they really struggled with it. So they can't wait to get back here. I don't know how it's going to go. I do know that this has been the place in my own life that I've been happiest living, and the community is incredible, and we don't know exactly when it's going to happen. It depends on when our house is repaired, and depends on all kinds of other factors. All of us in the community are weighing all kinds of financial decisions. There are things that are completely out of our control. There are people who've had to leave who don't want to. There are people who've come back to the same street but in a different house. Blake Mallon, I don't know if you know Blake, he had this incredible story of fighting all night to save his house. His house burned down anyway, but in the process of saving his house, or trying to, even though he failed, he saved one of the homes 2 houses down, and he ended up buying that house and moving onto his old street again just a few weeks ago. So there are all these incredible stories. As to the future politically, you know, I think that what I told, I'll tell you what I told the editor-in-chief of the California Post, who had spent some time as a correspondent in California for an Australian newspaper, but he's from Australia. So in a way, he asks me about my perspective on California because I have more of a local, not a native perspective, but more of a local perspective. And I told him, look, it's not really going to be any kind of major shift, whether because of this fire or other things. I mean, the state is a blue state, it wants to be a blue state, is going to be a blue state. But the change that might happen in California is we may get more competent public officials. You're not going to see a political shift. You might in small areas, but when I think of, and you'll permit me the indulgence of just talking up my friend Ben Allen a little bit, okay? Just because I've known him and have had a positive relationship with him so long. When he was in the state legislature, I saw him do things that were just extraordinary for a public representative to do. And one of them was when Breitbart opened a California office, we threw a little reception in Sacramento, and all the Republicans came, and he came. And the reason he came was because we're in his district, and he had no reason to come, and it was pretty toxic reputationally for a Democrat to show up at a Breitbart soiree or whatever. But he showed up, and he showed up because we were his constituents. And he just didn't care if anybody noticed or criticized him for it. And that's what we need. And Tracy Park, I had never met Tracy Park before the fire, but we had met her staff because there's a huge problem on the sidewalk as we used to walk to synagogue along Sunset Boulevard around the beautiful curve with the lake shrine. It's very dangerous. In fact, just a few months before the fire, there was a Tesla that flipped over that curve right onto the sidewalk, upside down. So we wanted barriers and better sidewalks. So we spoke to her staff, and they were very approachable, but I had never met her. And I was inside the fire zone one day, I think it was on the 3rd or 4th day of the fire, and there she was. And I said to her, I've not always agreed with your votes on various issues. None of that matters now. I said to her, as long as you're here and you're here with us doing what you're doing, we're always going to support you. And that's, I think, where she has been. And again, I don't want to make an endorsement or anything like that, but I just think that she's gone so far above and beyond when you compare her to the typical public representative. I think that's what we can hope for in the future politically, and just remind people that that's what they're supposed to do. And someone criticized, it was constructive and good criticism, the recent video I made with the New York Post, California Post, about the fire, which is a nice 15-minute video. I think it's moving, I think, because of all the stories and all the neighbors who participated. But one of my friends said, you didn't really criticize the federal government, because Trump came here a few weeks after the fire. He helped us get into our lots, but we haven't really seen the federal government since the cleanup stopped. And the truth is, that's a good criticism. I have been trying in every way I can to reach out to people in DC and get them more involved. And I think the problem really is the dysfunctional relationship between our governor and the president. It just doesn't allow anything to move forward. There are other issues as well, with fights over funding and how disaster relief funding is going to work for other places as well as our place. But I think that logjam has to break. And so I think it was a good criticism, and I think that needs to happen. I'm not sure who needs to show the leadership first, but I do think, unfortunately, as a nation right now, we reward politicians for how well they attack the other side rather than how well they perform. And I think that has to change. We have to have a performance-based politics in some way. And parties do matter. They organize ideas, and they're useful, and they're useful as checks and balances on each other. But ultimately, we really just need people to be accountable. And so that's the advantage of a platform like a podcast or a newspaper. And so I hope that we do extend this. And I would love to move beyond rebuilding, although I think rebuilding will always be part of the podcast. But we should talk about broader issues. I'd like to talk more about mental health as well. People talking about relationships and how those have been affected by the fire. But we Kids, yeah. And also, one area we neglected, I think, and I just met someone at the rally today at the protest, the Tahitian Terrace, some of the mobile homes or small trailer parks. People talk about affordable housing. That was affordable housing in Pacific Palisades, and they have no prospect right now of moving home. One final note about this, and I know you want to jump in. I thought today was incredibly impressive. All of the events, from the prayers in the morning to the protest. The protest was fun because even if you weren't listening to the speeches, it was so amazing to be there with all these Palisadians. And the Palisades Garden Cafe was full, and people were having trouble finding parking. It was just like old days. And it was so nice to be there. And then the 3 beams of light at the Village Mall tonight, which were spectacular. And then this amazing opportunity to observe the anniversary in this way. So I feel that this community has observed this day in a way that really does set it apart as a transition point, and we'll all still be struggling. But going forward, I think we're also going to be really rebuilding and building. And I said to my wife, this last year is the year everything happened to us. But this next year is going to be the year when we do things. This is going to be a year of doing and not just reacting. So that's how I see the future.
No, I wasn't really going to jump in. But I'd just like to hold the microphone. But, it's just a personal anecdote because it's just so fresh in my mind. I just came back from Tokyo. I was there for 2 weeks with my family. And I just remember, Tokyo is like one of the largest cities in the world. It's like 20 million people or something crazy. It's a massive city. However, I have 3 kids. I let my twin boy and girl essentially roam around the city, and I think Oren did too because he was there separately. We don't plan our vacations together, but he was there separately with his family, and we let our kids roam around the whole city, subways, Ubers, with their friends, and they just had a run of the city. And I was thinking in LA this would never be possible. And what it reminded me of, that actually in the Palisades it was possible. Because this was our community where we kind of felt sheltered away from the big bad world out there, which is LA and the state and all the mismanagement and everything. We kind of felt like this cocoon, and this last year kind of broke us out of it. And it made me think it made me first of all long for home and for that state where you feel safe and you feel like you're a little bit protected. But secondly, it made me think, this is crazy because I would never allow my daughter to like go around Santa Monica, even like across the street by herself. And it just made me want to bring those days back and like make a change. It really kind of like drove it home, and of how different things are here and how different things could be, even in a large setting, a large city, how civilized and great it was over there.
So, like, to connect back to your point, in Japan, the way the system is working, the more years you're in the system, you get more respect. People, like, average salary in Tokyo, I think, is $35,000 or $40,000, and people have a lot of pride in their work. And it's taking me back to think about the political aspect, because as you know, like Lindsay Horvath have been helping us. We've been texting with Lindsay late at night if she can help like a neighbor with his permits and stuff. And I know as a fact that she really tried to help us. I don't think the problem is with like Lindsay's office that really have been trying to help us. The problem is in like the people that sit in these specific spots, like approving your plans, getting you the permit on time. All these people, and again, comparing it to Japan, the way the efficiency, Japan has very strict rules, but once you go with the rules, everything is happening. I can tell you guys a story that like back in 2019, I worked in the streets of Tokyo, of Masumoto is a small town next to Tokyo, like an hour from Tokyo. I worked on the street selling jewelries. And it was very organized that I go, I pay the Yakuza once a week, and I get a permit to work at the station that I got. One time police came, closed my booth. The day after, the local Yakuza came, stand next to me, and allowed me to continue. So everything, again, it's like, you know, in some awkward way, there is like always like, if you go with a path, that's how it's going to happen. Now, over here, we're living like a very, with the permitting and everything, it's like very unknown. You can, Ron, you can submit your plans, and it will take you 3 months because the person that is approving your plans is Joe. And I can be with another guy named Alan, and it can take me like 6 months because the guy is not giving me all the corrections on time, and I can go back and forth, and I can go, and like it's not clear. It's very unorganized. There is a lot of power to the people that sit over there. At every seat, you speak to a person, he can decide to be nice to you and get you the permits quickly, or he can decide that, oh, you know what, you're going to wait for 6 months. Every month that we're waiting, on average, costing a person $20,000. If somebody is like delaying you every month, every like time is giving you another set of correction between the your architect that is really busy, and to them that are really busy until they give you an answer, it's like $20,000 to $40,000. And the people that sit over there need to wake up. The next person that we're going to elect need to know that, like, hey, if you're not performing your job, you're out of here. There need to be like some sort of accountability, and we talked about it, I think, in the podcast with Alex. I asked you, I don't remember if it was after the podcast or during the podcast, I asked you if like there is any responsibility for the fire department. They didn't perform their job. Is somebody going to lose his job? Can we like go after them? Can we sue them? No, we cannot sue them. But if you're not performing, we need to be able to, like, you know, you shouldn't keep your job.
Oren, what would happen in Japan to somebody like Karen Bass in her position?
Harakiri.
Yeah, no, but like I think it goes back to like the pride of work, and just like doing a good job, and like being proud of like doing a good job, and I don't know, like, you know, it's crazy to me like that somebody like that is like running again, like has the shame to run again, and is leading in the polls, and probably will get elected again. I mean, it's crazy. That's just crazy talk.
All right, let's open it up. Nate, how do we want to do this? We have other mics, or?
We got 3 mics. That's all we got. So anyone who wants to ask questions,
All right.
come up to the mic.
Or do you want to hand it out, or is it easier?
This will be easier.
Okay.
Then we don't have to
So here, Gene, by the way, owns and runs Azure, which is, well, you can tell us about it. It's
I run Azure Printed Homes.
printing,
But,
3D printing of homes. Pretty
Yeah.
incredible.
I hope you guys continue. I lived through Woolsey Fire 7 years ago. And the first year was very similar to what we're going through. And then it's amazing how people forgot and lost energy. And we just can't allow this because, I predicted Woolsey a year before. It was very rainy season, and then we had fires. So we're having really rainy season winter. If we're not going to start taking care of the brush next fall, guess what's going to happen? We're going to have fire. It's going to be, Palisades and Eden fires were 10 times worse than Malibu. And Malibu only, Woolsey, only 50% of the homes got rebuilt. Because you try for a year, you still have energy. You try for another year, you don't get permit. You heard today at the mall, there was a guy who said, I tried for 6 years, spent $100,000, and just decided to move on. And he moved to Palisades, right? So I really think that it's just real critical not to forget. I mean, it's like people are not talking about what are we facing. I'm afraid that the next fire is going to be, again, 3x or 6x, 10 times worse. So we got to be this is a real critical time for people not to forget what you all went through. I went through Woolsey and decided to move out. And I've been Marina, but I've been missing Malibu, so I'm moving back into Sunset Mesa, right? But we cannot lose the energy and momentum.
I fully agree with you. I think we all have our part to play in this situation. We're going to keep on doing what we're doing, and I think everybody in the community is doing a great job, and just keep on going, and everybody on their own track, whatever they can help with. I know we have people here from the legal world. I know you're going to keep on doing what you're doing, and you're going to keep on being a bulldog on the legal front. And I think there's multiple areas where we're all going to just have to keep on being the worker bees that push this thing forward and the narrative forward. And I think there will be results. I really do. And we're all going to keep on doing what we're doing. I know that.
Hi, I'm Brian Goldsmith. I'm a big fan of the show. I think you three have done an amazing public service for this community, having these conversations, bringing in experts from the community, outside the community. And I'm curious, now that you're looking back at nearly a year of doing this, what are the key lessons that you think policymakers ought to learn? I say this as someone who's actually running for the state legislature. What are the laws, changes that you think ought to be made at the state level that would make the rebuilding process easier, cheaper, more efficient, and more user-friendly for people in these communities?
I think, first of all, thank you for running. I think it's always good when people run for office. Secondly, every January 1st, there are always these articles in the newspaper, how many new laws take effect January 1st. We have hundreds of laws that are passed every year. I don't know if people know, I think it was 900 laws this year. I think the governor vetoed something like 200. You can't even read 200 laws in a year to know that you should veto them. There's some machine process, basically, that goes on. I don't think all of these new laws have made us any better at doing what we want to do. They just make everything more complicated. So I would almost want to take a step back and say, let's look at the system as a whole and what are the big changes we can make and simplify the way our laws work around all of these things, because human interactions are pretty complicated, so we need to let people figure them out, and it becomes more complicated when you have to move through this thicket of regulations and laws and fees and permits, and it's just so difficult. The insurance situation is a huge one, and I think it's been made more difficult by all of the laws and regulations. Now, those are helpful to us as consumers because we can now use them against the insurance company if you have a good adjuster and you know what you're doing. But they also give these companies leverage, and sometimes they make the companies leave if there are too many laws and restrictions. I think the biggest reforms have to happen with insurance because we have a risk of becoming uninsurable, and that's where I would start. And Ben Allen is running for insurance commissioner, but I think that's where it has to start. But as a public official, I would just say, again, just to come back to Tracy Park, and to Ben, because he's really been in the trenches, I think, helping people. I think the first rule of politics, as I was told by a politician I worked for 20 years ago, first rule of politics is be present. Always be there. And you can't be everywhere at once, but if people know that you are with them, then they feel that they are represented, even if the solutions aren't necessarily perfect and there are compromises that make things messier than they were before. I think public representatives need to be with the people that they're representing. And I do think that we could go into what Karen Bass's pluses and minuses were, whether she did this wrong or that right or whatever, but the big thing people know is that she was out of the country. I mean, that's the thing she can't undo, and the reason it's a problem isn't just that she was away. Politicians do travel, but she promised in her election not to leave the country. She actually made a campaign promise not to leave the country when she was mayor. So that becomes a problem. And I think Ricardo Lara, the insurance commissioner, the LA Times did an investigation. He was out of the country 163 days, and he had all these major trips to Dubai, and he went on safari, and I mean... right. So, I mean, I think that shows a culture that lacks accountability. And I think when you're with people, you know, and sometimes politicians will lose even if they do a good job. I was listening to some news today, and they reminded us of that great statement by Mayor Ed Koch of New York when he lost the primary, I think, to David Dinkins in 1988 or 1992, whatever it was. He said, the people have chosen and now they must be punished, or something like that. You know, like, I think we worry too much about who's winning the next election, and I think if politicians can put that to the side and just focus on being present with people, I think that's a huge thing.
And Joel, to your first point, it is amazing the number of small cities in California that cannot even absorb, let alone follow, the 1,500 to 2,000 new laws every legislative session. The mayors will say, you know, we got one guy in the back who's supposed to read all these things, and we don't have the capacity to follow all of it.
I mean, one more thing that I'd add to that, especially on the reconstruction, because that was the question, is like, you know, how do we fast track this stuff? Is technology. It's like we have such an antiquated way of doing things right now, and anybody who's been using technology, even for our insurance claims or whatever, ChatGPT, all this stuff, answering back emails to insurance, has learned in the last year is like, you really have to deploy this at a high level. Right now, the permitting process, it goes to some person that, you know, it's a different process with each person. It's a black hole. You don't know where you're going to get back. You're going to get corrections different from person A than you do it in different B. There's no need for all of this. There's technology today that you don't even need. Honestly, you don't even need at LADBS. You should be able to do this at home with using AI. Here are my plans. Are these acceptable with all the rules? Just feed it all the rules that the county has. Am I in compliance? If yes, give me the plans. I have approval. I can build it. If I don't build it according to plan, let's not do it. Like, then I'm going to get penalized. I'm going to get held back at inspections. But there's no need for all of this. This has been regulation on top of regulation, and it's holding all of us back, and we need to use technology to unlever us from all of this nonsense. There's so many rules on the books at so many different levels that we need to get rid of. And let me tell you something else. Like, you know, everybody's been following like the whole Minnesota story and the fraud stuff. The fraud that we have in California and the waste that we have in California is going to make that look like nothing, okay? Because as soon as somebody shines a light on what's happening in our state and all the money that's going to billions and billions of dollars that are going to NGOs and homeless organizations that don't exist, like, it's going to make Minnesota look like nothing. And I'm just waiting for that day. I think that's going to happen. I think we have to, anybody that's smart that's coming in has to use technology at a very, very high level from like, you know, at every layer that they can, because that's the only thing that can unblock all of this.
Another thing I wanted to add, I think that, like, again, the main problem is bureaucracy and the people that see it, not always the people that get elected, but the people that see, the people that, when I go to the counter, I talk to a person. If this person knows that he in some way is going to get accountable because the other person is able to approve 20 plans a day and he's able to approve only one plan a day, if he knows that he's accountable for this, he'll do a better job. And I think that all of us can agree that people usually in the city, people that has like jobs that are being paid by the city, by the state, You know, they're there. They're there until their pension is coming up. They don't really care about giving an amazing service. I own my business. Ron owns his business. Joe, like we all, like I'm telling my employees all the time, we're in the business of customer service. Customer service between each other, right? Because sales department need to talk to the production team to know, like, and these people, they just don't care. They just sit over there and they don't care. They get a lot of money. I just heard, like, I think a couple
They
of
might
months-
they might care. They're just incentivized on the wrong things. Like
No, wrong.
sometimes
sorry.
no.
I don't want to make it nice.
They might
No,
care. They might
no,
care.
No, they might care. Like, but a big percentage of them, they don't care. Talk to people that went through the rebuild process. You know what? I went to one of the offices. I don't want to say which office. I talked to one of the office manager, and she's like, "Listen, I don't even know what to do. Like, the people work over here, they don't care about you guys, and I don't know what to do." I heard, like, with a friend of mine that went to the counter of the fire department. A guy that is trying to get his permits from the Woodley fire from 2018 came, and the person in front of it, the guy from the fire department told him, "Hey, you know what? You're from the Woodley. We don't care about you guys anymore. We're just giving a priority." Even if this is like what, you shouldn't say something like this. And people, you know, the people that sit over there think that they have this job, they will get their salary no matter what. Nobody is going to like push them to do, and they should be afraid for their position. They should be like working hard for us. You know,
That's where the incentives come in, right? They're not incentivized to help you because they don't care. They're not going to lose their job. There's no metric on success other than just.
either this, or they need to be from the community, or there need to be something that like changes the system.
We're
Talk to
seeing it at every
developer.
level. Every
Talk
level.
to everybody that try to do a kitchen remodel in LA city, in LA County, like it's impossible. Why should it be like this?
I'll talk to LADWP. They put up an office in like a week next to my house.
Yeah. Go talk to them. Good luck.
I'm wondering if you guys can talk to some of the community efforts that you're seeing that have emerged. I agree with you. I think there's been a tremendous. We're sort of all in this Palisades diaspora in a way, and it's been incredible. I think we all share a lot. But I'm just wondering if you guys can speak to some of the different things you've seen doing the podcast and being involved in the community in that way.
Well, we had Kay Steinspear on our show. She has her own podcast as well. What is the name of the podcast again?
I have a brand new one, actually.
Oh, brand new. Okay.
Yeah, it's called The Obliterated Place.
The Obliterated Place. Okay. So Kay, in addition to doing a podcast, also has Team Molly, named after her daughter, and they have a space on Olympic and Purdue. His old office. And Kay was having a seminar there a few weeks ago about standing homes, and I went in, and it was actually my first time there, and it was so impressive. And Jeremy Padower, who organized the protest, had donated a bunch of Squishmallows. He manufactures toys and stuffed Pokemons and things like that. So I took a Squishmallow, I stuffed it into my suitcase, and I took it back to my 4-year-old, and she sleeps with it every night. It's absolutely, completely attached to this Squishmallow. And for her, it was something from home. Just, so, I mean, when I told the kids, when the house is fixed, maybe we can move back into it, the first thing she said was, "Are my toys still there?" She just, that's, so I think you're doing incredible work because you're providing a place where people can contribute and where people can receive. And that's just one example. There are lots of other organizations. I see Eric Handler here. He's on our board for the volunteer fire department that we started. It's officially called the Marquez Knowles Volunteer Fire Department. I thought there were going to be a lot of them. It turns out we're pretty much the only one. so we're going to start just calling ourselves the Palisade Fire Volunteers. But that has had a huge enthusiastic reaction today. We got so many people to sign up at the protest. So we're going to start small, but that came from an idea of just organizing the neighborhood to have better evacuations, better emergency response. I'm not going to be jumping out of a helicopter into a hotspot, but I will stand at an intersection with a yellow jersey and direct traffic so that there isn't the same traffic jam we had last time. I mean, just basic emergency response things. And also, I found that when I was the only resident in the neighborhood for a few weeks as a journalist, there was no layer between police and fire on the one hand and civilians on the other. So I was getting requests from police, can you identify who lives in this house because they're missing? Can you get the key to this yard from the fire department? They were saying, can you get the key to this yard because we need to go in there and check something out? Can you call the priest from Corpus Christi because we want to go into the sanctuary, which was completely burned, to see if the holy items are still there, but we don't want to risk our firefighters going in if we don't have to. Can you find the priest and figure out whether they have the things or not? I mean, I was suddenly a go-between, which wasn't really my job. I was happy to do it, but I realized there was this whole layer that was missing, that we just didn't have a way to connect first responders to the community, and that since nobody was being allowed in, there was no way to figure this out. And often it was very helpful when I was able to connect people. The WhatsApp groups were incredible that people started. There are probably so many other organizations that I'm missing, but I think people have really stepped up. It's been incredible. And just, I always have this feeling whenever I'm around Palisades, but I sent a text message to my wife from the protest. I said, we have the best neighbors. We really have the best neighbors.
Hello. Thank you for having me here and for having me as a guest on the podcast. My name's Kay Steinsapier. Thanks for your kind words about the work of the Molly Steinsapier Foundation. For those who don't know, our daughter Molly was tragically killed in a bike accident in the Palisades almost 5 years ago. So all the work we do is in honor of Molly. And her legacy continues to grow, and we continue to help more and more people in honor of Molly. But what I wanted to say is I was one of the neighbors who saw your increasingly large Trump signs. I didn't know Joel before, and maybe it speaks to my own bias that I guess I didn't notice the increasingly large Biden signs across the street because I'm a Democrat, but I noticed the increasingly large Trump signs. And so I didn't know you, Joel, and I didn't know either of you. And, you know, I never miss an episode of the podcast. We have become friends, and I really feel like that it's not even just the fire, right? Like, because like you were saying, like, okay, you know, sometimes we can find commonality on issues about like disaster recovery, right? But I feel like in getting to know all of you that actually we agree on a lot of things, even though we would be kind of probably diametrically opposed politically. I'm like lifelong liberal Democrat. So I wonder if we can think about ways to like expand conversations that we can have to a wider audience so that more and more people can, because I believe that's true of most of the country, actually. I think we're so in these echo chambers online, but if we could actually start to have conversations and actually get to know each other more as people, we would realize we are not actually diametrically opposed. And I feel really, really grateful for the opportunity, even though it came because of the fire, that I opened my eyes and let go of my preconceived biases and got to know people I wouldn't otherwise have gotten to know, and realized, oh, actually, they're really not different from me at all. And so I wonder if, as we're thinking about how we go forward with our mutual podcasts and what we're doing in the next year, is we're not just responding to things that happen to us, but actually being proactive. Is there something we can do beyond the Palisades to kind of share this as a model and expand these conversations in a really positive way?
I think that you really hit the nail on the head, and I think that the lesson is that local community self-governance really matters. The pandemic hurt because people became isolated, and I don't think people have come back fully from that. And one of the things that we've seen in our country is that at the same time that local journalism has declined and national cable channels or national journalism or podcasts have become more dominant, polarization has increased because people don't know each other except through the prism of these national issues. And I feel like that's part of the role of the California Post, is to restore at least a kind of state level consciousness among California readers, so that we don't relate to each other in LA by talking about what's happening in Washington. We can talk about things that are happening in our state. We can talk about things that are happening locally. There was a huge sense of sadness when the Palisadian Post announced that it was closing. I mean, we do have to have these kinds of conversations, these kinds of events, and maybe that's the model, is to bring people together. In fact, you were saying, Nate, earlier, this is the future of media. We're going to have small audiences, small interactions. People need that. It's part of understanding one another, but it's also part of self-governing. I mean, I used to often say to people, you know a lot about who you're voting for president. Who's your city councilor? Like, who's your city council member? And people don't know. They know more about national politics than they do about the things that actually affect whether the garbage gets picked up or who's in charge of their schools. And I think that's been a lesson we've had to learn the hard way a little bit, but I do think that there's an opportunity in it to talk about local things and to connect locally, and also to talk about local differences. I mean, when Jennifer reached out to me after Doug LaMalfa died, and she shared some of her thoughts, that she was very sad, even though he was 100% with Trump and she's 100% against Trump. She said, I just missed the fact that he worked well with me on these issues. And I wrote back and I said, you have a big heart. And you can see a person's heart when you can see that they've done work for you on the ground in your community. This other stuff can be bracketed in a way. We're still going to disagree about these things. And I think that face-to-face interactions and these kinds of relationships are so important. And there is a way to do it in the podcasting world. I'm friendly with Scott Adams, the Dilbert cartoonist, and he has, unfortunately, terminal cancer. And so many people are saying how he's changed their lives. He's been quite isolated in his home, but he's reached out and found this audience. So I do think that you can reach out through these incredible media technologies that we have. But I also think that you need to reinforce that with some kind of, at least personal intimacy of some kind, and sharing what makes our lives work, and just getting to know one another. I think that's
when we
missing.
mutually also, with our respective friends and people who follow us, when we can say, I can say, I'm friends with Joel Pollack, he works for Breitbart, he works for the California Post, and I can say that to my liberal friends and say, he's a great guy, and bridge those differences. I should also mention that at the Molly Stein Sapir Foundation, one of the best things I think we do is we have an incredible youth board comprised of teenagers, and they operate just like a regular board of directors. And we bring in, we brought Tracy Park, we brought Ben Allen, we're bringing Rick Caruso to meet them, and we're dealing with that issue of missing civics education. I'm an attorney. I'm very passionate about government and politics, and I know that that's something that's lacking, and it's something I find so interesting and I care so much about. And so we've been bringing those young people together and bringing the elected officials in together as well. And it's really incredible. I think it's probably, of all the things we do, some of the most exciting work. And so I mention that just to say, for anyone listening, get your kids involved with our youth board, because they're doing great work. They're learning how to run a board of directors. They are, operating in their roles, they're making decisions, they're raising money, they're doing work, and they're meeting with incredible leaders. So I think that's something we can offer to anyone who's interested.
Maybe we should have some closing remarks and let people get some rest after this very long day. Thank you, Kay. Do you guys want to close it out? Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, just like on your point again, Kay, is just be open-minded. Like, I think we just all have to let go of our preconceived echo chambers and just be open to new realities. And I think still people are very dug in. And, politically, I just say, let's bring forward the people that can do the best job for us. I don't care where they're from. We saw that today with the announcement with Spencer. I really hope that he runs a great campaign and wins. I think we need somebody like that to shine the light on a lot of the issues that we've been dealing with, and obviously he can be at the forefront of that. And I don't even know what party he's running under. I don't know. I don't know if you know that, Joel, but I don't care. Like, I don't care if he's a Republican or Democrat or independent. Couldn't care less. Let's just let go of all of our preconceived biases and just be open to new ideas, new technology, neighbors, ideas that are going to take us forward. And I really do believe that we're going to see some great things happen in this year. Like, I think the last year has been terrible. It's been very tough. But I really feel like very positive after a day like today, that things are going to take a turn and we're going to start seeing things move.
So I think that again, it's going back to like where we started, like the power of community, because we have a very strong community. Obviously, the city that is going to get rebuilt is going to be it was a very rich city. It's going to be even richer because of like all the double taxes that we're going to pay, each one of us, which nobody is going to be able to stop. But I think that the only thing we can do is to put the right people over there to make sure this money is working back for us. And this is very important, that we'll choose the people that really care about our community. People from our community, people that care about our community, people that are going to put over there the people that is from our community, people that will be like, will take responsibility. I think that that should be the goal for our podcast as well, is to bring out these people, talk about their opinions, talk about like, hey, you know what? I don't know. I don't care if it's Karen Bass or Joe Schmo. I don't really care, you know, who is the person that's running to be the mayor. But like you said, Joel, I had no idea. I didn't even know like Karen Bass. That's how clueless I was in like local politics. Obviously, I cared about like national politics like everybody else, but I didn't care. But this is the things that like affect our life the most. End of the day, you know, like whatever happened in Washington doesn't affect my tomorrow. Whoever we're going to elect in the next like 6 months is what's going to affect us, and those are the people that we need to see who we want.
I'll just close with this thought. During the pandemic, I was inspired by Scott Adams, who encouraged us. He had this nightly podcast, he called it The Swaddle, where he would sort of comfort his audience and say, listen, I know everybody's afraid of this pandemic, but you can use this as an opportunity to exercise or to read a book or to start a project. So I went back and read 2 books that I'm ashamed to say I hadn't read before in my expensive education, which was, I hadn't read the great Iliad or the Odyssey by Homer. And I decided I was going to read these books and that I was going to read them to my son. And he loved it because he started scribbling and drawing pictures of what he thought were the great battles of these Greek epics. But what I learned in doing that was that the stories, these great epic poems of classical Greek literature were really about going home. I mean, Homer's Odyssey is about a guy who tries to get home. And it's the great theme of the human experience. What we're going through is a tragedy that is something we're dealing with on our day-to-day level, but it's also a universal human experience that we all want to go home. And that thought has been very comforting to me and inspiring to me, that we're going through something universal. And in my mind, I really do have a vision of bringing my kids back to our house and tucking them into bed or playing catch in the backyard. And I know they're going to be older and things are going to be a little different, and the friends they used to run to around the corner aren't necessarily going to be there anymore. But I feel like whatever happens in the rest of their lives, I want them to have that experience of going home, and that's something we do as human beings. And no matter what happens, we try to go home. So hopefully this can be a home for many other events like this, Nate. And thank you again to Nate and to Helene and to Miller Inc. for having us all here tonight.
Thanks so much. We really appreciate it.
Can I say one thing?
Greater LA.